Hey Rayleigh and anybody else watching, and welcome back to another message from your father. 2 Chronicles 14 through 17 today. If you remember, we were looking at the son of Solomon, Rehoboam. We also saw the split of Israel and Judah. So essentially this ended up being Rehoboam versus Jeroboam. So we saw what happened there, and then today we are going to be looking at two more kings. So specifically at Asa and Jehoshaphat. So we'll see, those are Judean kings, so we'll see a little bit more about them, and then we'll talk briefly about a very interesting verse that seems fairly innocuous, fairly innocent, but it is pretty interesting and why context matters. So again, 2 Chronicles 14 through 17 today. So chapter 14. And Abijah rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. Asa, his son, succeeded him as king. And in his days the country was at peace for 10 years. Asa did what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord his God. He removed the foreign altars and the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He commanded Judah to seek the Lord, the God of their fathers, and to obey his laws and commands. He removed the high places and incense altars in every town in Judah, and the kingdom was at peace under him. He built up the fortified cities of Judah, since the land was at peace. No one was at war with him during those years, for the Lord gave him rest. Let us build up these towns, he said to Judah, and put walls around them, with towers, gates, and bars. The land is still ours, because we have sought the Lord our God. We sought him, and he has given us rest on every side. So they built and prospered. Asa had an army of 300,000 men from Judah, equipped with large shields and with spears, and 280,000 from Benjamin, armed with small shields and with bows. All these were brave fighting men. Zerah, the Cushite, marched out against them with a vast army and 300 chariots, and came as far as Mareshah. Asa went out to meet him, and they took up battle positions in the valley of Zarephath, near Mareshah. Then Asa called to the Lord his God and said, Lord, there is no one like you to help the powerless against the mighty. Help us, O Lord our God, for we rely on you, and in your name we have come against this vast army, O Lord. You are our God. Do not let man prevail against you. The Lord struck down the Cushites before Asa and Judah, and the Cushites fled, and Asa and his army pursued them as far as Gerar. Such a great number of Cushites fell that they could not recover. They were crushed before the Lord and his forces. The men of Judah carried off a large amount of plunder. They destroyed all the villages around Gerar, for the terror of the Lord had fallen upon them. They plundered all these villages, since there was much booty there. They also attacked the camps of the herdsmen and carried off droves of sheep and goats and camels. Then they returned to Jerusalem. Chapter 15. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Azariah, son of Oded. He went out to meet Asa and said to him, Listen to me, Asa and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you when you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you. For a long time, Israel was without the true God, without a priest to teach, and without the law. But in their distress, they turned to the Lord, the God of Israel, and sought him, and he was found by them. In those days, it was not safe to travel about, for all the inhabitants of the land were in great turmoil. One nation was being crushed by another, and one city by another, because God was troubling them with every kind of distress. But as for you, be strong, and do not give up, for your work will be rewarded. When Asa heard these words of the prophet of Azariah, son of Oded the prophet, he took courage. He removed the detestable idols from the whole land of Judah and Benjamin and from the towns he had captured in the hills of Ephraim. He repaired the altar of the Lord that was in front of the portico of the Lord's temple. Then he assembled all Judah and Benjamin and the people from Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon, who had settled among them, for large numbers had come over to him from Israel when they saw that the Lord his God was with him. They assembled at Jerusalem in the 3rd month of the 15th year of Asa's reign. At that time they sacrificed to the Lord 700 head of cattle and 7,000 sheep and goats from the plunder they had brought back. They entered into a covenant to seek the Lord, the God of their fathers, with all their heart and soul. All who would not seek the Lord, the God of Israel, were to be put to death, whether small or great, man or woman. They took an oath to the Lord with loud acclamation, with shouting, and with trumpets and horns. All Judah rejoiced about the oath, because they had sworn it wholeheartedly. They sought God eagerly, and he was found by them. So the Lord gave them rest on every side. King Asa also deposited his grandmother, Maacah, from her position as queen mother, because she had made a repulsive Asherah pole. Asa cut the pole down, broke it up, and burned it in the Kidron Valley. Although he did not remove the high places from Israel, Asa's heart was fully committed to the Lord all his life. He brought into the temple of God the silver and gold and articles that he and his father had dedicated. There was no more war until the 35th year of Asa's reign. Chapter 16. In the 36th year of Asa's reign, Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and fortified Ramah to prevent anyone from leaving or entering the territory of Asa, king of Judah. Asa then took the silver and gold out of the treasuries of the Lord's temple and of his own palace and sent it to Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, who was ruling in Damascus. "Let there be a treaty between me and you," he said, "as there was between my father and your father. See, I am sending you silver and gold. Now break your treaty with Baasha, king of Israel, so he will withdraw from me." Ben-Hadad agreed with King Asa and sent the commanders of his forces against the towns of Israel. They conquered Ijon, Dan, Abel, Mam, and all the store cities of Naphtali. When Baasha heard this, he stopped building Ramah and abandoned his work. Then King Asa brought all the men of Judah, and they carried away from Ramah the stones and timber Baasha had been using. With them, he built up Geba and Mizpah. At that time, Hananiah the seer came to Asa, king of Judah, and said to him, "Because you relied on the king of Aram and not the Lord your God, the army of the king of Aram has escaped your hand. Were not the Cushites and Libyans a mighty army with great number of chariots and horsemen? Yet when you relied on the Lord, he delivered them into your hand. For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. You have done a foolish thing, and from now on you will be at war." Asa was angry with the seer because of this. He was so enraged that he put him in prison. At the same time, Asa brutally oppressed some of the people. The events of Asa's reign, from beginning to end, are written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa was afflicted with a disease in his feet. Though his disease was severe, even in his illness, he did not seek help from the Lord, but only from the physicians. Then, in the 41st year of his reign, Asa died and rested with his fathers. They buried him in the tomb that he had cut out for himself in the city of David. They laid him on a bier covered with spices and various blended perfumes, and they made a huge fire in his honor. So there are two things that are there's a lot of things that are interesting about this. Number one, we see a shift in Asa. We see him start out as doing some good things, and then once he hears from the prophet, he does really good things, and he is dedicated. His heart is wholly dedicated to the Lord. And then it says years later. So a lot of time has passed, and we see that his faith is diminished. And we don't read too much into this because the word doesn't say it, but it seems to imply that he's relying on his own resources instead of God. I mean, you can almost see some of the pride. Look at some of the wealth that I have done. Hey, I have enough money. I might be able to pay off these people so that they can help me and stand by my side. So, I mean, again, it doesn't say that expressly, but that's what it seems like. And in fact, when the next prophet comes to him and says, "Hey, why didn't you do this? Now you're going to be at war the rest of your life." That's really interesting and sobering. It means even in our old age, at every age, we should be seeking God. The other thing that's interesting is 16:12. 16:12 says, let me get there. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa was afflicted with a disease in his feet. Though his disease was severe, even in illness, he did not seek help from the Lord, but only from physicians. So that's kind of an interesting verse. I mean, what's wrong with seeking the help of physicians? Well, there are kind of two things here. Number one, physicians in this time, this is just according to a note that it has on here, King Asa suffered from a serious foot disease, which some scholars think was dropsy. The Bible criticizes his consultations with physicians because in those days, physicians were pagan healers who used rituals that conflicted with the law of God. So number one, that's why context is always so important. But then the other thing that is, when we're looking at this, that's kind of interesting, is many people will say, well, you're Christian. Why don't you just pray the pain away? Why don't you just pray the disease away? And some believers try and do that. And I think it shows faith, and that's a good thing to have a lot of faith. God absolutely can do that. But at the same time, it's important that we recognize when God has placed us and the time that God has placed us in. God has given us doctors. God has raised people up and allowed people to understand the body better. God has given us these people. And so when we pray to God and ignore what he's provided us, is that a good thing? Are we honoring God when we are ignoring what he's given us? I don't think so. Anyway, really, that is my prayer for you, that you recognize what you have been given from God, that the age that you live in, the place that you live in, the people around you are given by God. And that could be for challenge. Maybe those are difficult people in your life. Or that could be for good. Maybe you have some really good mentors. Anyway, know that I love you and I'm praying for you. For anyone else, know that I appreciate you so much. And I'll plan on seeing you tomorrow. Have a good one.